Hello, ladies and gents. We're on the module A225 Block 3. Decline and Renewal, 1880 to 1914. Edited by Robin Mackie. Unit 9, Popular Culture, Identity and the Lived Experience of the Working Class. Page 182. Work in the sense of performing household tasks for the family, even if her daughter doesn't see it that way. For a different perspective on a female work inside and outside the house, read the recollections below of Miss Ferry, who was born in 1902 in the same potteries of the North Staffordshire. How does she describe her mother to the historian who interviewed her, and how does this description differ from Miss Sloane's? She worked as a lathe trader. She did it from when I was a little girl. Then, of course, when the family grew, she gave it up for a while. And she used to tread the lathe for the things that they use in hospital laboratories, mortars and pestles. She did that kind of work, which was very, very heavy. And then she had a rest period because the family was growing. There was 9 of us, and my mother took two of her brother's children that were left orphans and made 11 of them, and me granny. That made 14 of us in one house, but we never seemed to get under one another's feet. Miss Ferry's testimony illustrates how much views about female work and notions of respectability could differ. Even within the working class, like Miss Sloane's mother, Miss Ferrier's mother stayed at home while raising her children. But Miss Ferrier described this as a practical necessity and a mere pause in between periods of employment, rather than as a mark of respectability. It also it is also rather striking that Miss Ferrier describes raising 11 children as a rest period for her mother. Compartmentalisation of the work and social life. At the same time that workers saw their incomes rise in real terms, working hours were on a downward trend. The economic prosperity of the 1870s and the growing strength of the trade union led to higher wages and shorter hours. And in many trades, working hours fell from 60 to 54 hours a week. Daunton 2007, page 384. The achievements of the campaign for a 9 hour day were not challenged even during the Great Depression of the late 19th century, and a campaign for an 8 hour day was even started in the 1890s, although it was not successful until after the end of the First World War. Changes in the working class week also took place. Similarly, one through collection negotiation rather than parliamentary legislation. The main trend was towards the implementation of regular hours and days of work, as opposed to the traditional practice, especially in workshop trades, of concentrating work towards the end of the week. You may remember saying Monday, which you encountered in Unit 3. The practice was slow to disappear. By, but by the 1850s, unions had started suggesting using Saturdays as an alternative. And by the early 1890s, many workers enjoyed a 2 day weekend. In addition, some traditional holidays had survived the Industrial Revolution, including Christmas, New Year, and local holidays around local fairs, feasts of wakes. As in the Lancashire Wakes or holiday weeks, a number of bank holidays were also created by Bank Holiday Acts of 1871 and 1875. The downward trend in working hours encouraged employment to become more compartmentalised and clearly separate for social life. In the industrial sector, in particular, mass production uh, necessitated stricter organisation, including regular timekeeping and discipline. This was in addition to the loss of domestic conviviality associated with workshop production, debate, gossip, and discussion were curtailed in factory environments dominated by noisy modern machines. The physical separation between the workplace and the private sphere also grew wider as both the workplace and cities became larger. Well, most workers lived near their place of work in 1880. This is no longer the case in 1914, something that was made possible by the growing availability of trains, trams and bicycles. Work also became more age-specific. As already mentioned, child labour decreased in the period. In addition, while older people had long been forced after employment when they become physically unable to work, by the end of the period, the idea of the state pension was beginning to emerge. The Old Age Pension Act 1908 provided a low level of income to people over the age of 70 who met certain conditions. Outside the workplace, the private sphere was also being increasingly limited and defined. In the mid 19th century, the lack of transport infrastructure constrained urban development, and families lived in densely populated buildings with shared privies and water pumps. In the year 18, you encountered the London slums, and overcrowding remained a major problem in some industrial cities such as Glasgow. But overall, by 1914, working class houses were typically larger. The private domestic space was becoming del- uh, delineated with water, gas, and sanitation contained in each household. For example, while only 1 in 12 houses had access to piped water in 1840 Newcastle, by 1940 this had become virtually universal. Thornton 2007, pages 425 to 6. All these changes fed into the 19th century shift to a culture of private domesticity that also encouraged the emergence of new markets for domestic consumers' goods. Cheap furniture, linoleum, fabrics, wallpapers, and so on. This section has outlined the social economic shifts that played a role in the emergence of a new working class culture. A number of changes transformed the lives of working people of Britain, including rising wages, as well as a decrease in working time and increasing separation between the workplace and the home. In the rest of the unit, you explore the impact of these changes and focuses on the new practices and habits that shape working class experience. 19.2 Leisure and Consumption. You may remember from Unit 3 that 18th century popular leisure had traditionally been structured around the local working lives of farmers and artisans. The leisure culture of artisans and craftsmen tended to be urban. It was associated with street games, pub drinking, and St. Monday, and it was also relatively closely linked to politics. It has sometimes been seen by Marxist historians, especially in the 1960s, as the authentic form of working class culture and as having played a key role in the 19th century emergence of working class identity and political consciousness. Indeed, you may also remember that this local traditional culture continued to survive well into the 19th century. However, with the rapid acceleration of urbanisation and industrialisation in the late 19th century, new forms of leisure also emerged. This section examines the three characteristic aspects of the new leisure culture in the period 1889-14: urban leisure, mass consumerism, and associational life. Towards the end of the 19th century, working class leisure became increasingly linked to mass commercial culture. This was described by Gareth Stedman Jones as a slow erosion of the political energy that had characterised traditional artisan culture in previous decades. Stedman Jones, 1974. In addition, Peter Bailey argued that this erosion was encouraged by middle class reformers who promoted new forms of rational leisure, such as organised reports in order to organise and control the working class. Bailey, 1978. The marked increase in police efforts to monitor daily life in local communities was also stressed by Marxism inspired historians. As early as the 1840s, authorities had been anxious to police rowdy popular entertainment through a bureaucracy of official morality. Storch, 1975, and by the end of the century, the policeman had become a much represented fixture of daily life in working class communities. In 1871, there were 10,350 London and 15,860 provincial policemen. Figures rose to 16,900 London and 27,360 provincial policemen by 1901. Briggs et al. 2005, page 129. One of the major tasks of the expanded police forces was to regulate and monitor working class leisure activities. This increasingly visible and interfering blue plague was often regarded with hostility. Storch, 1975. In Flora Thompson's semi-autobiographical novel, Candlefield Green, the author recalls that in the 1880s, the village constable was still regarded by many as a potential enemy, set to spy upon them by the authorities. Thompson, 1943. Reacting against these Marxism-inspired accounts, historians such as Bailey have moved away from the idea of an authentic traditional working-class culture and of ordinary people as the passive victims of social control. Instead, they have emphasized the agency of working people, as well as the plurality of their experiences, which could be very different according to gender, generation, income, or geographical location. Bailey, 1998. They argue that while working people embrace commercial leisure activities, they did so on their own terms, and in turn, that commercialized mass culture reflects traditional popular practices and tastes. This section follows a similar perspective. The examples below illustrate continuity as well as change, and they suggest that working class people had real agency in the creation of their own culture. But this is not to say that the notion of class should be discarded. Indeed, in the 21st century, historians have increasingly warned that the diversity and the inequalities that characterize working class life should not obscure the consensus and mutuality that also existed in working class communities. And they have attempted to use notions of class, agency, and diversity in conjunction with each other. Bevan, 2005. The rise of urban leisure culture. The division into time, work, and leisure can sometimes be blurred and subjective. For example, shipbuilding sites in the early 20th century were notorious for being so large that supervisory staff were unable to prevent card playing at work. Nevertheless, it seems clear that from 1870 onwards, working people had more free time than in previous decades, and they often choose to do different things with free time. The traditional leisure culture you encountered in Unit 3 was significantly transformed in the period 1880 to 1914. This transformation happened for a number of reasons. The growing distinction between public and private spheres impacted on previous patterns of work and social activities. Houses become more private and the streets more public. Playing instruments, shouting, or playing sports were less tolerated in the streets and regulated domestic spheres, or to spaces dedicated to leisure such as parks, two particularly striking new aspects to leisure, which will be discussed in some detail in the rest of the unit, where that it become increasingly commercial with the rise of the music halls, cinemas, and seaside resorts, as well as increasingly formalised with the growing success of organised team sports, competitions, clubs, and associations of all sorts. At the same time, traditional artisan culture experienced a sharp decline, paralleling the decline of workshop manufacturing. It was replaced by a new leisure culture that was closer to middle-class norms and therefore more respectful. In cities such as Edinburgh, artisans joined clubs for horticulture, golf and bowling, and participated in volunteer force. A volunteer part-time citizen militia that developed increasing ties to the army in this period. Yet the new urban working class culture that flourished in the period, 1880-1940, continued to reflect many elements from traditional artisan culture. For men, the pub remained the heart of the most leisure activities. Besides offering alcohol, it served as a centre for a new organised activities such as brass bands, choirs, sports teams, and flower shows. Bringing together neighbourhoods and local communities, another distinctive feature of urban working class culture in the period was its competitiveness. Pub competed against pub in activities including darts, bowls, and card playing. Far from seeing its role diminish, the pub was at the heart of the culture of participant competitiveness, competitive, competitiveness. For example, pubs in the mining communities of South North Humberland provided facilities for only 3% of reported competitions in 1876, but 39% in 1855. Cunham 2008, page 316. This urban leisure culture, however, did tend to be very male centric. Women did not usually participate in such pub or club centred activities. Female leisure was more informal and domestic and less centred on specific activities. Working class women also participated in more clearly demarcated leisure activities such as going to the cinema from an early 1900s, but everyday female leisure remained primarily characterised by a sense of neighbourhood. Consumerism for working people. Consumption patterns had traditionally been a matter of simple survival, securing food, clothes, and shelter. But as real wages rose in the latter part of the 19th century, so did disposable income. For the first time, many ordinary people had money to spend on better and more varied food. Staple foods, such as bread and potatoes, were increasingly replaced or supplemented by more expensive items such as meat, fruit, and vegetables, some of them imported from the empire. They also purchased more fashionable clothes, paid for their entertainment, and consumed a range of household goods that had been previously reserved for the middle classes. Increased consumption was also facilitated by the rise of credit. Working people had always been able to borrow money informally. By the end of the 19th century, new formalised systems of lending were established. They were needed even by more affluent working people to purchase expensive goods such as pianos or living room furniture. These were paid for instalments spread over several months or even years. Bear with me a sec. Oh. Didn't see on there. Back again, sorry about that. Even years. Merged later in partners with start and swing machines. The commonly based potato bicycle in 19 there was around million agreements. The council child members born in Saffron near Manchester, where the parents and shop were slums, where Peter became teacher and writer, and his book combines deeply personal recollections with historical facts. Analyst Roberts extract from the classical slum, 1971, located in the unit. Read the text carefully and jot down a list of all the household goods he cites as being desirable. How does Roberts explain working class people's desire for more consumer goods? Roberts mentions simple day-to-day goods for regular use or decorations such as oilcloth and tablecloths, rugs and carpets, good quality bedding and underclothes, framed pictures, as well as more expensive luxury musical instruments, especially pianos, sewing machines, bicycles, gramophones, gold lockets, watches, and so on. He explains that such possessions help make the home feel like a cosy refuge against the world, which echoes 19th century ideas of domesticity. They also asserted people's social standing. Displaying damage or low quality laundry could do social damage. Another suggestion he makes is that accumulating possessions help stifle the fear of destitution. While Roberts doesn't use the word, this reading could be analysed in terms of the importance of respectability. For the working class, it conveys the weight of social judgment and importance of maintaining one's social standing. The extract could support both the idea of respectability, merely echo middle class ideals of domesticity, love of luxury items such as pianos and gold watches, picture of children taking dancing and singing lessons, and the view that working class people constructed their own notion of respectability. For example, expensive objects such as sewing machines and bicycles were not necessarily luxuries, but rather highly useful tools that could save time and money. There was also clear social judgment passed on people who did not manage their money wisely or had to rely on credit to purchase goods. Turning to 19.2, Jacqueline Sarsby, Women Pottery Workers at Home, 1988, located in the unit. This is another extract from Sarsby's All History of the Staffordshire Potteries. Did Miss Farmer's family share the same notion of respectability as Robert Roberts? Miss Farrier's family was clearly less fluent than the community described by Roberts. They appear to have needed to pawn possessions regularly, yet Miss Farrier's grandmother and mother thought of themselves as respectable. Her grandmother took care of her appearance when she went to the pawn shop and equated respectability with honesty. Similarly, while her mother pawned her children's essential possessions without permission, she always returned them by the following Friday. This suggests different standards of respectability, based not on middle class ideals of domesticity, but on the ideas of self reliance and honesty. Many contemporary inquiries and surveys written by middle class people commented on the increasing presence of consumer goods in working class homes, often to criticise it and to suggest that working class people should instead spend their income on healthier food, house repairs, or savings. As highlighted by Robert's recollections, however, these household goods often fulfill an important cultural function in working class communities by establishing a clear distinction between the rougher elements of the working class and respectful workers who took pride in their house and appearance. Disposable income, availability of credit, and new ideas of domesticity and responsibility thus fueled a rise in demand for household goods. Towns become more commercial, providing the working class with affordable leisure opportunities as well as consumer goods. Music halls and cinemas were built, and some seaside resorts redefined themselves to cater for the working class. In reading 19.1 above, Robert recalls that families saved to afford a day at the Southport, but the most successful seaside town was in fact nearby Blackpool. Its pioneering use of electricity in the 1870s to light its distinctive promenade established in it as a prominent working class holiday resort. The number of annual visitors rose from 1 million in 1883 to 2 million in 1893 to 4 million in 1914. Kahneman, 2008.